Hello friends, for today's video we are going to be doing a manga vlog as well as a light novels vlog because I am starting my read-along for the Apothecary Diaries light novels. So I wanted to chat through what I'm going to be reading for this and then also just give you updates as I progress through it. What I've done in the past that I think is the best way of having a combination of things that are spoiler free but also for those of you that are familiar with these stories, or if you're that rare breed of reader where actually hearing spoilers helps motivate you to pick up a series. A way that I have tried to navigate this so that I include different perspectives and different approaches is that I will have sections that are spoiler free, and then I will note if I do dive into spoilers, I'll go ahead and ensure that I have a spoiler tag and timestamp so you can skip ahead and that you can approach this in whatever way works best for you. Besides the Apothecary Diaries light novels, I'm also going to be picking up the rest of what's out of the Frieren manga. One, because I've been meaning to catch up with this. That way I'm all caught up with what's currently out, but also because a couple of the volumes that I have are actually from my library and they are due. So I really need to get around to them. Those are the two main priorities for this reading vlog. I will update you as we go. As is the case with any kind of reading vlog, I of course like to always have Luna Bear, my adorable Akita, who's currently sleeping in the corner over there. I always like featuring her, but on that note, let's go ahead and jump into the vlog. Oh, Luna, is something exciting happening? What is it? Your ear cleaning? Yay! Are you so happy? Oh. Oh. Yay! Good job, Luna Bear. I'm so glad you like it. Luna? Good job. I have finished the first of the Apothecary Diaries light novels, and I wanted to go into these with some tabs because I figured, oh, well, maybe there will be things, even though the first 4 light novels are what the first 2 seasons of the anime are going through, and thus I'm familiar with it. I thought because of the mystery of the week feeling to this, and the way that's kind of deceiving you, because then you don't really realize when some of the details that are being laid out for you actually connect to a greater overall plot line because of the way it's set up and because it's so deceptive in that sense. I thought, okay, I'm going to really go through and I'm going to tab whenever there's something that I think catches my eye or what's this about and kind of have predictions. But then I just found myself tabbing every time I thought Mao Mao was funny as well. I still tabbed the other things too. Or any time that I just felt like something was an indication of like, wow, I didn't realize that this early they were kind of cluing you into this. So I ended up tabbing it so much. I never feel like when I say that and then I show it, it actually looks like that much. But it was constant. Like sometimes multiple times a page or several pages in a row, I was tabbing things. And I actually was nervous when I made the decision to read the first 4 light novels, and I was nervous because I thought, I'm already familiar with all of this, and I just really want to keep going. Is it a mistake to go through these first 4? And now there's a part of me that's almost sad that the first spoiler conversation I'm going to have, which will be happening in August, that the first spoiler conversation is going to be for 4 light novels, instead of just 1 at a time, because I'm like, oh, I have so much to talk about just from this one thing. First off, the character of Gaoshin, I have always loved. It's one of my favorite characters, and I do feel like the light novel maybe highlights this character a little more. I will note that the anime adaptation is fantastic and that they really nail some of the scenes and some of the characters and their expressions, the way they look, the way they dress. They do a great job where it almost feels like this was written after. That's how good the adaptation is, which is, I feel like, what we want out of a lot of adaptations. Anyway, this is not a conversation about adaptations, but the point is that with this particular character, Gaoshin, I've always loved this character, but I do feel like within the light novels, his, like, exasperation, I guess you could say, I think comes through a little bit more. Also, Mao Mao kind of appreciating Gaoshin, and I feel like in part because of his exasperated nature and the fact that she feels that way about Jinshi a little bit too. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I just love they're not even really interacting necessarily. I mean, they are, but not in the same way that Mao Mao does with other characters. It's more of just like they're both sort of in Jinshi's orbit and there's sort of this quiet acknowledgement and understanding from each other. But there's this one scene that happens within the story where Jinshi, he's being kind of creepy, and Gaoshin's just kind of looking the other way, and Mao Mao's just like, and she thinks to herself, I'm going to put laxatives in something of his later. And, which is a funny scene, as far as Mao Mao's reaction is funny. Jinshi, it's one of my least favorite Jinshi moments, because I'm like, you're crossing a line, which we will get into things to do with Jinshi in probably a separate video essay, but this is a moment that I don't love of his, is when he's like trying to get Mao Mao to eat honey. And I won't give details because I'm sure you know, and if you don't know, that's all you really need to know, is he's trying to get Mao Mao to eat honey, and she really doesn't want to. And this is one of those moments where Gaoshin probably should have like cleared his throat or done something to be like, hey, Jinshi, this is a little weird. He doesn't, and in the light novel, it even makes a point to note looking out the window at birds or something like that in a way that is so clearly not a real thing that he's doing. It's so obviously just this pose. So Mao Mao has the same reaction in this as she did in the anime, which is like, oh, I'm gonna have to put laxatives in his food later. But later on, Gaoshin is reflecting on the fact that Mao Mao gave him this dirty look, and he's like, oh no, what is she gonna do as a result? And his reaction I thought was so funny, because I'm trying to point out things that are like slightly different from the anime, or that are additional details that the anime doesn't have. So when he's thinking about like, oh geez, what's she gonna do to me? It says, when he recalled Mao Mao's baleful look, he worried she might yet have something in store for him later. Gaoshin touched his hairline. He was just starting to fret about it. So I love the idea that he's worried that Mao Mao's gonna somehow make him lose his hair. I found that very, very amusing. There's also a lot, because my friends and I, when we did a spoiler discussion for the second season of the show, there was a lot of wondering about certain characters and if they were going to be threats later. One of them I am in agreement with, because this is something that was kind of a major talking point for one of my friends. And I agree with her. Like, I also question, just based off of the political landscape that we're looking at within Apothecary Diaries and reveals that we know we're getting later, that in hindsight for this first portion, I could see this person being a threat in some fashion. And the sad part is that these characters are not necessarily either of them villains in nature. The characters that you could see going against each other, it's not like this good guy and then this character's going to become a bad guy kind of situation. It's more of, you like both these characters, but you could see based off of the circumstances where they might end up having to go against each other in some fashion, or they might become overly suspicious of each other in some fashion. And I do think that the anime has the character, she is somebody involved in the inner workings of the Rear Palace, we'll say. And she also seems to have connections to people on the outside. And she, at this point in time, through the end of the first 2 seasons of the anime, and also, I've only read the first light novel, but I know that the first 4 covered that amount of time. So at this point, this character has not proven themselves to be a threat in any way or to be in total opposition. She has this demeanor of being unthreatening. Like, she doesn't seem like she is craving power or anything. She just seems like she's like the perfect version of what she needs to be. She also has connections to Mao Mao, and Mao Mao likes her, and this lady is liked by most people. But the light novel, I think, especially takes note of the fact that she's good at not just being charming and chit-chat, she's also kind of good at getting people to talk. And then it seems like she takes note of that information and she reports it back to people from where she's from. And you're like, okay, that seems like a little bit more than just she's looking out for her own. It kind of seems like maybe there's more there. And I think the part, and this is where I will note a spoiler, so if you don't want spoilers, I'm going to give some specifics here for just a sec, and I'll have a timestamp in case you'd like to skip over. So I'm going to clarify who I'm talking about right now, for those of you that are like, can you just say the character's name? So Lady Kyoko is who I'm referring to. And the reason I'm referring to this character as somebody who I could see going up against someone else is because she, of course, in being a concubine and trying to potentially become the person who's going to be the mother of the next emperor, that puts her in opposition to other people of the royal line, possibly. So she also is somebody who is from the West, and we know that she's sending information back. The light novel, that's what I was trying to take note of, is that the light novel, I think, makes more of a point to talk about how she sends information back to the West, and that, I think, is innocent enough, because the idea could just be that she's just ensuring, because they don't have as much. It would seem like the landscape itself, like the setting, is a little harsher, so she's trying to have these political ties that can benefit her people. But the specific thing that I definitely think that the show notes this, I just think it was somehow it stood out to me more in the light novel. And I've rewatched the first season too, so it's not like I didn't see it when I watched the show. But something about the way that the light novel showcases her in this one moment, to me, just highlighted that maybe there's more to this character. And that's very early on. There's that character who Mao Mao surmises purposefully structured her release from the Rear Palace so that she could marry her childhood best friend. And she kind of hints to Gyoko that this is what she thinks. And Gyoko says, basically, is it wrong of me to say I envy her? The idea of being able to like marry somebody that you love and that you can kind of sort of have this freedom. It's really the only time that we see this sort of crack in the perfect concubine image that she has developed. And as such, that part now stands out in my mind even more because of the fact that I feel like she is potentially trying to attain power, but she's just never presented it. And maybe there's a little part of her that wishes that this wasn't necessarily her role. Like, she's doing something for the good of her people, but maybe she would prefer if she could have just like this life of kind of more of the basic things a lot of us want out of our lives. So she has stood out to me quite a bit more as a result. Mao Mao is just so funny and so dry. She also consistently thinks that Jinshi has way too much time on his hands. And we know he doesn't, because sometimes we get his perspectives, and it's noting that as soon as he gets through one pile of papers and he's getting through his work, all of a sudden there's a new pile of papers on his desk and he just has no time. So we know that that's not true. But because for Jinshi, the thing that makes him happy, like the thing he seeks out when he wants a break from work, is Mao Mao. Like, she brings him happiness. And there's a lot to say about how he treats her and how he goes about things that we can have a lot of conversations about, certainly. But it doesn't change the fact that he is a very busy person. She just isn't aware, because in her mind, it always seems like he's just there, he's just around. Even the way it's written, where it's just like, and of course, I'm sure already, it will acknowledge almost like a breaking of the fourth wall. Like, I'm sure you figured out by now whose beautiful voice Mao Mao just heard. That's right, it's Jinshi. Like, there's a lot of wording, things like that I found really amusing. But one part with Mao Mao that made me laugh, because I feel like the sarcasm and the dryness you almost don't note in the narrative. And then the further in you get, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I see it more. I think, of course, having seen the anime and knowing this character already, you already are set up to see it, but I do think that it becomes more obvious as you're reading. Back, though, to the idea that Mama has it in her head that Jinshi's never doing any work, there's this interaction between the two of them where she thinks to herself, it's one thing to have too much time on your hands, but to actively ignore your job. And then to Jinshi, she says, perhaps you should go take care of it before the tasks pile up too much. And then it tells you, Mamo conveniently ignored the fact that she hardly did any work herself, which I really appreciated, because she just, the way that she's constantly thinking like, geez, this guy is really, really amusing to me. There is something that I noted early on, which is how she thinks of, there's a number of things about how she thinks about Jinshi. She kind of immediately can't stand him, and she's really, really harsh towards him. And then, of course, one of the things that I think is very fair of Mao Mao is that we know that she has a hard time reading people, but she seems to not like when people seem fake, which I think probably plays into the idea that she has a hard time reading people, because that would be especially annoying. You already have a hard time reading people and also understanding how they feel about you. And then when somebody is purposefully putting on a front, when you can at least see the front, it's like another barrier of understanding what people want and what they're saying, and just speak clearly and just act like a person. So I think it makes sense that irritates her. I think she respects when people are more straightforward. We know, it's not just that I think, we know, because she's always thinking like, okay, good, this is going to go smooth because this person is just going to say what they're thinking. So she has moments like that. But there's something about an interaction between her and Jinshi, and then like her kind of assessing, I like when he's being his normal self. You know, there's a number of times where that happens, where you're like, okay, we're collecting data. Mao Mao prefers when it seems like the real Jinshi comes through as opposed to this perfect Jinshi the eunuch character. But there's a part where she's acknowledging, because she's constantly thinking like, he's so beautiful, what a waste. And she's not thinking of it in the sense of like, oh, he's so dreamy. She's not thinking of it like that. It's just a fact, like, oh, this person is very, very conventionally attractive. And then she has this thought about how she prefers to admire those things from afar, because when something is that beautiful, whenever there is any kind of blemish, it stands out that much more. And she's kind of comparing it to like if there's this painting and then there's this scratch, then suddenly that's the main thing you see. And I think there's a lot of interpretations of that. I can't tell if some of her animosity towards Jinshi is like this idea of she sees herself as the blemish, like when they're around, because she specifically has this thought, because she even thinks I prefer to see it from afar. So then I'm like, is it that when you two are in close proximity to each other and you're forced to be around him, it highlights circumstances outside your control? Because we know that Mao Mao, she didn't have the easiest life growing up, and we know that she recognizes that some of the concubines or even some of the women in the Verdigris house, that they, in having a certain level of beauty, are kind of granted respect. She even thinks, like, I can't ever have Jinshi go to the Verdigris house as, like, one of them, because it would completely ruin the whole place. Everybody would be obsessed with him. But she recognizes, like, there's a level of ease in life that comes from the way you look. And yes, we know that she goes out of her way to diminish her looks based off of their society's beauty standards so that she can avoid other people taking note of her. And it's not that she necessarily ever notes that she wants beauty for herself, but I definitely think that Mao Mao is somebody who values being able to just do what she wants to do. And she doesn't have that opportunity because of how society is. And so I think some of her views of Jinshi, first off, we already just saw, she seems to think he has all the time in the world, which is a slight, like, that's actually not true, but that's her assessment. So she already thinks, like, this guy just gets to go around and do what he wants to do. And then he's also additionally so beautiful that it impacts literally how everybody treats him. Everybody's treating him in a way that is so like, oh, look at this person. And they automatically kind of grant him a certain level of adoration and sometimes even respect just based off the fact that he's so beautiful. And I think it, in her mind, it grants him this level of freedom. And I think that when she's near him, this like blemish that she's referring to is a number of things, an acknowledgement that she doesn't have that because she is a product of her society and a product of her society as being of a lower class and what comes with that. And that's something she's accepted, but there's probably a level of like frustration and envy. She's constantly assessing the fact that if he orders her to do something, she has to do it. And if she ever crosses a line, he'll probably have to have her executed. Like, she acknowledges these things with a level of pragmatism, but also it's like, that's got to eat at her a little bit, right? And something I like about Apothecary Diaries is it doesn't always come right out and tell you this is how the characters are feeling. You kind of have to piece things together. And there are various interpretations. So I think in a way, when she talks about like admiring it from afar but being up close, it's like the closer she gets to it, the more she has to reckon with how the world really is and how it treats people differently. Of course, from Jinshi's perspective, the interpretation I have about why he seems to like really find himself drawn to the fact that Mao Mao looks at him with such disgust and that she speaks to him differently, and he even acknowledges like, nobody else talks to me like this, and she's like, everybody else is too polite, is that he doesn't like that everybody just inherently grants him adoration and respect. And there's even a part where he's thinking, whatever I order right now, Gaoshin will obey it, whether it's just or unjust. And it makes him want to make the right decision. And that's why I like this character, is because he doesn't have anybody telling him what's right. It's up to him to decide. And he's so young and he has so much pressure on his shoulders and he's trying, but he doesn't have any really thing to guide him. And I think with Mao Mao, it's like all that fluff, you could call it, all the political scheming, all the talking around what you actually want to say, goes completely out the window, and she's the only person that will talk to him like a real human being. And it just so happens that to treat him like a real human being is to kind of treat him with disrespect to some degree. As much as she tries to like not get her head chopped off, we'll say, she still is kind of cold to him. And I think that's part of why he appreciates it so much and why he actively seeks her out. Another factor, though, is that it could just be the very idea of like there being a blemish kind of thing, is that he is so beautiful that she doesn't want to see the things about him that she wouldn't like, because it's kind of in the same way that I think sometimes there is like this, I don't think Mao Mao engages in this, I'm just using this as an example to draw a parallel. People sometimes have like idols and they'll say like, don't ever meet your hero, because when you meet your hero, they're never going to live up to the thing. So I think for Mao Mao, it's like she can appreciate this unreal level of beauty, but then the second that she has to acknowledge like, oh yeah, this is a person, I think it maybe bugs her. So that's perhaps another interpretation or another factor into the equation. But the wording was very interesting, and I think there's a lot of potential takeaways from it. And I do think what's interesting is that these two characters can be the most themselves around each other, and at the same time seem to always, I don't want to say misunderstand each other, because I think obviously we have a lot of connotations when it comes to the word like misunderstandings, the misunderstanding trope in fiction. So that's probably not the right way to put it, but it's like they don't have the opportunity really to speak as clearly to each other as probably they want, because of decorum and because of what's proper and because of their status and because there's always got to be somebody around as a chaperone, you could say. But they're so close to being able to, and if they could just have a conversation and talk to each other, I think these two characters, I think that's why we're so drawn to the two of them, is you keep seeing them have these moments where it brings out something in the both of them. Their presence brings out something that nobody else seems to bring out. So anyway, really, really have been enjoying. There's so much more to say, which I'm sure I'll get into when my friends and I have our spoiler discussion for the first 4 light novels. There's so much more to say. I'll leave it at that for now with this, and then I'm going to be jumping into the second light novel. I already have my tabs. I'm now trying to color coordinate my tabs with the colors on the covers, because I kind of accidentally did that for the first one. So I'm going to kind of keep going with that. So I've got that one ready to go, and then we're going to be jumping into some Frieren. Okay, so I'm about to show you a giant dead bug. So if you don't want to see this bug, skip ahead. I have a pencil so that we can get a size reference. You cannot convince me that this bug I'm about to show you isn't a demon. It's so gross and it's so big. So let us go outside. Oh. I don't want to get near it. Why is it so big? Why is it so big? It's so big. It's so gross. Luna is hiding over there, but I want to get Sean's reaction. I just saw his car pull up, so I want to get his reaction to this bug before Luna realizes he's home and gets excited. I still have her doggy door closed. I know, Bear. We have to get rid of it before you go outside. I think it's a Palo Verde beetle. But anyway, let's go see Dad's reaction. All right. It's just sitting in the sun right now. It's so gross. Okay.
Where is it?
It's over between the two chairs.
Holy moly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Makes me want to cry.
I know, that's what I said. You can't hold it. Okay, that actually, I know, it makes it, I think, look bigger.
It's closer. Or should I just take it out there?
I mean...
For the birds to eat its carcass.
I know, I kind of thought about that. It's so gross. Thank you. Switching now to Frieren Beyond Journey's End. I read volumes 10, 11, and 12 for what we're going to be discussing today, and I was so excited to jump back in because I was really loving the current arc that I was in the middle of, and volume 10 has probably been my favorite of this story so far because I really liked the moral implications, and I actually think it's kind of a compliment to say that I was so engrossed in a character story that had nothing really to do with any of our main cast. I think that's very difficult to accomplish, and especially because within Frieren, many of us know, even if it's not necessarily episodic in the sense that everything is going to equate to a 22-ish minute long episode, it still has that feeling of short stories. And when you have a cast of characters that are essentially your through line, the thing that connects all of these short stories and also contributes to their development as well, I do think that to have them essentially completely removed from one of the episodic moments within the story and then still be that interested in what's happening, I think is quite a feat to have accomplished. Volume 10 is really diving specifically into the morality of the demons, which is something that I have wanted to get further into, especially based off of some of what we've gotten previously, and we really get to dive into that in volume 10 specifically, we get some setup into it, so there's a lot of intrigue building because this is a little bit of a longer arc. A lot of Frieren, as noted, it's not just episodic, but it's very, very short moments. And then occasionally you'll get these bigger arcs. And I actually didn't love the previous big arc we got, the exam arc. That was not necessarily one of my favorites. But this one to me stood out because of the fact that it was doing something so different, not just for Frieren, but for a lot of fantasy stories. Something that I think a lot of fans of this series actually kind of like about the demons in the story is that they're more animal-like. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite series of all time, the Winnowing Flame trilogy, where the antagonistic force across the trilogy is this sci fantasy. I don't want to say too much if you haven't read Winnowing Flame, but there's reasons why it's sci fantasy and not just fantasy. It's like this force of nature almost, and something behaving within its instincts. It's not necessarily malicious, and rather it's just trying to survive. And so the demons are very much rooted in that as well. However, part of their development that has aided them in survival is their ability to speak to humans and even somewhat resemble and look like them. And thus they use these abilities to trick them. And they have recognized that human beings can be deceived if you talk to them a certain way. If you say things like mama, if you are looking like a child or something like that, that human beings are going to want to help, and then that's when they are able to pounce. And they don't do it to be cruel, they do it because they are trying to eat, they're trying to survive. And what I really liked about this particular volume, because the demons are very clearly capable of intelligent thought, they're just different in what thoughts and feelings that they are able to tap into. And this particular plot is essentially taking that idea of they don't do anything maliciously, and they're seeing that humans are capable of malice, and they want to know what that means. They are able to tap into the concept of curiosity, and they end up developing a curiosity toward humans for that emotion, as well as other human emotions that they've never experienced. And they keep trying to understand it over decades and decades and decades, to a point where they essentially start to align themselves with humans and live side by side with humans because they're so desperate to understand. And so it actually seems like there's potential for there actually to be coexistence between humans and demons, which is a thing throughout the course of the story up to this point that Frieren especially has been telling us is not possible. I loved exploring the backstory of this character. I thought he was one of the most compelling characters that we've gotten in a long time. Once again, not just from Frieren, but just stories in general. I found him so fascinating, and I wanted him to be able to coexist. And what was really sad is when he didn't have the ability to understand human emotions, he was able to coexist just through the desire of wanting to understand. It was when the desire to understand outweighed the actual coexistence that he currently had that things started to become troublesome, and that's where finally Frieren and gang enter the picture. But I absolutely loved it. However, this arc contained both one of the things that I think is really amazing about Frieren and one of the things that irks me a little bit, which is the action scenes within this story, for me, are starting to lose momentum. I think they work better in the anime because the animation itself is really fantastic. The music is great. But I think especially within the manga, part of why I lose interest a little bit, and this actually is true of the anime as well, I'm just more engrossed because everything is really well done there, but I never feel like I'm buying into the stakes because it does kind of have that habit of Frieren always has a trick up her sleeve, and if not Frieren, then collectively through the trust of her allies, she knows that somebody else is going to step in who's on her side, and then they're going to beat the bad guy. And it does that a lot, and it's also in the middle of those moments when the fight is actually happening. You're just kind of waiting for when the ally is going to jump into the picture, or you're waiting for Frieren to have her trick up her sleeve sort of thing. That in the meantime, there is this sort of, this demon's way more powerful than a lot of the demons I faced before. Wow, her mana really is strong. Wow, I've never seen her use this kind of move before. Or I've never seen any of them use this move before. I've never heard of this one, which spells trouble. So it's establishing in the moment potential stakes, But because time and time again, and it's never really deviated too much from this, because time and time again, it always works out, I just am like, can we just get to the part where you win? Because I know it's going to happen. And I think I am being biased currently because I just came off of finishing my rewatch. I have consumed Full Metal Alchemist many a time at this point, but this was the second time I've watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And those characters in that story die, they get injured, they get severely injured, they lose constantly. And it's to a point where as you progress, you think, I don't know if we're gonna, I'm pretty sure we're gonna save the day, but also, are we all gonna make it out of this? Is gonna be a devastating ending? And even when you know, that's what I think is really special about Full Metal. Sorry to bring Full Metal into the equation, because, I love it, but I talk about it a little too much. However, the point is that within Full Metal, even having seen it before, even having read the manga before, I still get choked up in certain moments because of everything the characters have gone through, all the times that they lost the battle but they're still fighting the war, that kind of thing. The amount of tragedy that befalls these characters and the weight that they carry. I am so locked in to all of the action scenes, and in this story I have yet to really feel that that is true of Frieren, and I hope that maybe, it sounds kind of sad and morbid to say, but I kind of hope we lose a little bit more often, I suppose, and in ways that are really detrimental to the general feel of the party. Like, how are we going to push forward if this person isn't with us, or how are we going to push forward if this person sustains this injury, and I want there to be a little bit more of that. So while this was my favorite arc that we've gotten so far, and one of my favorite moments of a lot of arcs in general in manga, it also had that little bit of criticism just within it, just a tiny bit. Now, we have come away from that arc and we've entered a new arc. So I'm currently now in the middle of another arc. That's one unfortunate thing about reading through Frieren, is I feel like the arcs end in really random places and start in random places, and rarely does it line up with the end or beginning of one of the volumes. So the arc that I'm currently within has to do with magic that Frieren's not really familiar with, and it launches her back in time. And currently, I'm waiting for a little bit more to be done with this. I can't really comment too much because this has happened, this has occurred, and she's like, well, I can't do too much because that'll impact the future. I just got to figure out how to get back to present day. But if you know anything about Frieren, you know a big part of her journey is reflecting on the past while currently navigating present day and realizing what she had and wanting to ensure that she doesn't get so caught up in what she's lost that she misses out on what's right in front of her now. And she's learning to really embrace life and all the little moments and big moments within it. So it's a really beautiful concept, and now that she has the chance to go back, thus far, most of what's been happening is Frieren's companions are essentially like, oh wow, you are different. You're different than you were before. And that's nice to see that there are those moments where there's recognition of growth within the character. But I'm waiting for a little bit more to actually transpire within this, because it's a pretty monumental thing to have occur, especially given the entire setup of the story. But currently, it feels like we're setting up maybe to the more impactful moments. So we'll see what happens when eventually I pick up more Frieren, and it might be a little bit before we actually get more out. So I'm a little bummed to have stopped once again in the middle of an arc, but so it goes. That's it though for some thoughts for Frieren and Apothecary Diaries. I will be, of course, when I get the chance, continuing on with the Frieren manga, because while I have the occasional criticism here and there, I still really think it's a great story, and I am excited to see what happens next. Obviously, of course, I'm going to keep going with Apothecary Diaries because I love it so much, and it's so fun being able to be back in this historical setting. But anyway, if you have any thoughts about either of these, feel free to leave those in the comments. And if you want to talk spoilers, just of course ensure that you write spoilers and then enter a few times so that nobody has anything ruined for them. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later.